The darkness of space rippled with distant flashes as the Titan Armada broke through the void, emerging from the cold abyss like steel titans of war. Hundreds of warships, each the size of a city, moved in formation, their massive hulls reflecting the dim glow of a nearby red dwarf star. The people of Kareth Prime had feared this moment for decades, whispering rumors of Earth's unstoppable military might. Now those fears had become reality. Commander Elias Voss stood on the bridge of the UNS Dauntless, staring at the planet below. Kareth Prime, an independent colony that had declared sovereignty from Earth generations ago, had become a thriving civilization of its own. But Earth never forgot, and now the Titan Armada had arrived. Not for negotiations, not for diplomacy, but for dominance. "Sir, we're receiving hails from the Planetary Council," Lieutenant Orla Tan reported, her voice steady but tense. She had served under Voss long enough to know the look in his eyes, a storm brewing behind a facade of composure. Voss exhaled slowly. "They know why we're here. Open the channel." The holographic screen flickered to life, revealing a council chamber filled with grim-faced officials. At the center stood Chancellor Dren Halvorn, a man known for his unyielding defiance against Earth's rule. His silvered hair and lined face spoke of years spent fighting a war of politics and ideals. "Commander Voss," Halvorn greeted, his tone cold. "I assume you're here to demand our surrender?" Voss held his gaze. "Kareth Prime was founded on Earth's resources. Your people were once citizens of the Terran Republic. Your rebellion has gone unanswered for too long. We're here to bring you back into the fold." The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the distant hum of the ship's systems. Halvorn's expression remained unreadable, but a flicker of something, anger, defiance, crossed his features. "You see it as rebellion," he said finally. "We see it as freedom. Your Armada may have the power to destroy us, but you'll never own us." Voss knew the words were posturing, but they carried the weight of conviction. He had read the reports. Kareth Prime's people were resilient, resourceful. They wouldn't bow easily. The question was, how much destruction was Earth willing to inflict to make them kneel? Before Voss could respond, alarms blared across the Dauntless. Red lights flashed. Orla's hands flew across the console, her expression tightening. "Sir?" "Unidentified vessels just appeared on the outer edge of the system," Voss turned sharply. "Kareth ships?" Orla shook her head, eyes wide. "No, sir. These signatures don't match anything in our database." A new face appeared on the screen. An officer from one of the Titan-class battleships. His voice crackled with urgency. "Commander, we have incoming unknowns. Energy readings are off the charts. Whatever they are, they were waiting for us." The realization hit like ice. The Titan Armada, Earth's ultimate force of conquest, had arrived with overwhelming power. But they weren't the only ones watching. Someone else had been lurking in the shadows of space, waiting for the moment Earth made its move. Voss turned back to the screen, meeting Halvorn's gaze. For the first time, the Chancellor looked uncertain. "You didn't call them, did you?" Voss asked quietly. Halvorn shook his head. "No, and I don't think they're here to save us either." A single message echoed through the comms, broadcasted in an eerie, unfamiliar language. Then, as if to make their presence unmistakable, the unknown fleet opened fire. The battle for Kareth Prime had just become something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The first barrage hit hard. Blinding streaks of plasma tore through the black void, slamming into the outer edges of the Titan Armada. Shields flared in defiance, but the sheer force of the assault sent tremors through the Dauntless. Warning sirens screamed across the bridge, and for the first time in his career, Commander Elias Voss felt truly unprepared. "Damage report," Voss barked, gripping the edge of his console as the ship rocked violently. "Shields at 74%, several vessels taking heavy fire. Unresolute just lost primary engines." Orla shouted over the chaos, her fingers flying across the controls. On the main screen, the unknown fleet emerged from the darkness. Sleek, angular ships with hulls that seemed to shift like liquid metal. Their formation was tight, precise, moving with an eerie coordination that sent a chill down Voss's spine. This wasn't an ambush. This was a calculated execution. "Who the hell are they?" one of the officers behind him muttered, voicing the question hanging in everyone's mind. Voss turned back to the flickering hologram of Chancellor Halvorn. The Kareth leader's expression had shifted from defiance to something far worse. Recognition. "You know them," Voss said, his voice sharp. Halvorn hesitated, then nodded. "Not much. We call them the Wraithborn. They've been watching us for years, always at the edges of our territory, never attacking, never speaking. Until now." The name sent a wave of unease through the bridge crew. Stories of mysterious ships lurking in deep space had circulated for years. Ghost fleets seen on long-range scanners, entire colonies disappearing without a trace. Earth had dismissed them as paranoia. Now, the truth was staring them in the face, weapons hot. A sudden impact jolted the Dauntless again. Sparks flew from an overhead console as another Wraithborn barrage struck. Voss clenched his jaw, forcing his mind to focus. It didn't matter who they were. Earth's fleet wasn't going to be torn apart without a fight. "All Titan-class ships, return fire! Target their lead vessels and disrupt their formation," Voss commanded, his voice cutting through the noise. Across the fleet, Earth's warships retaliated. Rail cannons fired, their projectiles slicing through space at unimaginable speeds. Missile salvos streaked toward the enemy, detonating in bursts of fiery destruction. But as the smoke cleared, the Wraithborn ships barely flinched. Their hulls shimmered, absorbing some impacts, evading others with unnatural precision. "This isn't working," Orla said, her face pale. "Our weapons are barely scratching them." Voss didn't need to be told twice. He watched in horror as the UNS Retribution, one of the most powerful battleships in the fleet, took a direct hit to its reactor core. A moment later, it erupted into a blinding explosion, debris scattering into the void like shattered glass. Over 1,000 crew members gone in an instant. "We're outmatched," Halvorn said grimly, "and if we both fall here, Kareth and Earth die together." Voss's stomach twisted at the thought. He had come here prepared for war, but not this war. Not against an enemy that neither of them understood. "Sir!" Orla's voice broke through his thoughts. New energy signatures, near the planet's surface. Voss turned to the planetary feed. Below, Kareth Prime's atmosphere burned as more ships descended. But these weren't Wraithborn, nor were they part of Earth's fleet. "Impossible," Halvorn whispered. That's old Kareth tech. Ships we lost decades ago." Voss narrowed his eyes. The vessels rising from Kareth's surface were smaller, sleeker, designed for atmospheric combat. But if they were relics, how were they activating now? Orla's console beeped urgently. "We're receiving a transmission from one of those ships." The bridge fell silent. The audio crackled, distorted by interference. Then a voice broke through. Calm, commanding, and all too human. "This is Captain Leora Vale of the Kareth Resistance. All forces listen carefully. The Wraithborn are not your only enemy." Voss exchanged a stunned look with Halvorn. "A resistance? Hidden beneath Kareth's surface for all these years? And if they weren't fighting for the Wraithborn, then who were they fighting against?" Before he could ask, the transmission cut out. The unknown ships powered up their weapons, aimed not at the Wraithborn, but at both Earth's fleet and Kareth's forces. The battlefield had just grown even more complicated, and the Titan Armada was caught in the middle of something far bigger than a simple war for control. The battlefield had become a storm of chaos. Earth's fleet, the Wraithborn, and now the unexpected Kareth resistance, all locked in a confrontation that no one fully understood. Explosions rippled across the void as the Titan Armada struggled to adjust to the shifting tides of war. The Dauntless weaved between wreckage and enemy fire, its shields flickering under the relentless assault. Commander Elias Voss gripped the armrest of his chair, his mind racing through possibilities. Leora Vale. That name meant nothing to him, but Halvorn's face had gone pale the moment she spoke. "You know her." Voss said sharply. Tell me who she is. Now! Halvorn exhaled slowly. She was a ghost. A myth. A leader of the original rebellion before she disappeared over 20 years ago. His eyes flickered to the battle screen. She's supposed to be dead. Well, she's not, Voss shot back, and she just turned her guns on both of us. Why? Halvorn hesitated, but before he could respond, the resistance ships made their move. They weren't as large as the Titan Armada or as advanced as the Wraithborn, but they were fast. Too fast. They darted between the larger vessels, striking with brutal precision. Sir, they're targeting our engines, Orla called out. They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to disable us. Voss clenched his jaw. Whoever Leora Vale was, she had a plan. He just didn't know if it ended with them alive. A sudden voice echoed through the comms. Leora's voice. Commander Voss, Chancellor Halvorn, stand down. You don't understand what you're up against. Voss's gut twisted. Then enlighten me, Captain Vale. There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice was edged with urgency. The Wraithborn are not here by chance. They followed you. They always follow conquest. The words sent a chill down Voss's spine. He glanced at the tactical display. The Wraithborn weren't moving like invaders. They were moving like predators, circling, waiting. You're saying they are drawn to war? Voss asked. Not just war, Leora corrected. Empires. Expansion. The moment Earth sent its armada, they knew you were ready to take, to consume. That's what they hunt. Voss felt the weight of her words settle over him. Earth had always seen itself as the rightful ruler of its colonies, bringing order to the scattered remnants of humanity. But what if that vision of dominance had painted a target on their backs? Halvorn's expression darkened. If what you're saying is true, why didn't they attack us before? They don't care about scattered colonies, Leora said. But when an empire moves, when it grows, that's when they strike. You brought them here, Commander, and now you have to help stop them. A deep silence filled the bridge. The war between Earth and Kareth had felt inevitable, but now it was meaningless. A larger enemy had been waiting in the dark, and they had walked right into its jaws. Before Voss could respond, another alarm blared. Sir! Orla's voice was laced with panic. The Wraithborn are shifting positions. They're locking onto Kareth Prime. Voss's blood ran cold. The battle had been a distraction. The Wraithborn weren't here to fight a war. They were here to erase one. The largest of the alien vessels moved into position, its hull splitting apart in a slow, deliberate motion. A glow built deep within its core, energy surging like a star being born. They're going to glass the planet, Halvorn breathed. Voss stared at the screen. Earth's warships were still engaged with the resistance. Kareth's defenses were in shambles, and the Wraithborn were about to deliver the killing blow. Commander, Leora's voice cut through the tension, steadier than before. I have a plan. But you need to trust me, Voss exhaled, his mind screaming for a way out. The war he came for was gone. Now there was only survival. Then talk fast, Captain, he said, because we're almost out of time. The Wraithborn superweapon pulsed with growing energy, its core expanding like the birth of a new sun. Kareth Prime's surface lay below, its cities unaware of the impending annihilation. On the Dauntless, Voss felt the weight of the moment press down on him like a vice. They had seconds, maybe a minute, before the planet was turned to glass. Tell me the plan, Captain Vale, Voss said, his voice taut. Leora's transmission crackled. There's an opening. The Wraithborn's power core isn't invincible. If we overload it from within, we can destabilize their entire fleet. Voss didn't hesitate. How? My team already boarded one of their vessels before you arrived, Leora said. We've been studying their systems, looking for a weakness. Their defenses are nearly perfect, but their power grid is alive. It adapts, but it also needs harmony to function. If we disrupt it with enough force, their entire network collapses. Voss exchanged a glance with Orla. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but desperate was all they had left. "You need a coordinated attack," Voss said, "and you need a distraction." "Exactly," Leora replied. "The problem is, we don't have enough firepower to pull it off alone. That's where you come in." Voss exhaled sharply. He had led the Titan Armada to crush Kareth, not to save it. But the battle they had come for was meaningless now. If the Wraithborn won, there wouldn't be an Earth or Kareth left to fight over. "Orla, open a fleet-wide channel," Voss ordered. She hesitated for only a fraction of a second before nodding. A moment later his voice rang across every remaining Earth warship. "This is Commander Voss. New orders. All ships break engagement with Kareth forces. Redirect firepower to the Wraithborn capital vessel. We need to give Captain Vale the opening she needs." There was a stunned pause before a response crackled through. "Sir? Are we fighting alongside Kareth? Unless you want to end up like the Retribution," Voss snapped. "You'll do as I say. Now move." The hesitation vanished. Across the battlefield, Titan-class warships realigned their positions, disengaging from the Kareth forces and unleashing their firepower on the Wraithborn mothership. Missiles streaked through space. Rail cannons thundered, and the air crackled with the energy of high-intensity beams, slamming into the alien hull. The Wraithborn shifted in response, their formation tightening, but their focus was now split. Kareth's forces saw the shift, and in a matter of moments, Halvorn's voice joined the comms. "All Kareth vessels, follow suit. We take down the Wraithborn first, everything else can wait." It wasn't an alliance. It wasn't peace. It was survival. Voss clenched his fists as the battle turned into a chaotic storm. The Wraithborn's eerie coordination faltered slightly, their ships adjusting erratically as the sheer force of two armies bore down on them. The capital ship's core pulsed brighter, as if sensing the growing threat. On the screen, Leora's fleet of resistance fighters surged forward, weaving through the storm of debris and laser fire, heading straight for the Wraithborn's flagship. The moment of truth was coming. Orla turned sharply. "Sir, the Wraithborn are adapting. They're pulling energy from their damaged ships to reinforce their core." Voss's pulse pounded. The aliens weren't just powerful, they were learning. Leora's voice cut through the tension. "We're almost inside. Keep them off us just a little longer." Easier said than done. The Wraithborn shifted tactics, their vessels ignoring the larger warships and targeting Leora's strike team instead. One of her ships exploded in a flash of white-hot fire, then another. Voss made a decision. "Helm, full speed, get us between them and the target." The Dauntless lurched forward, engines roaring. Plasma bolts and ion bursts struck its reinforced hull, rattling the entire ship. Damage reports screamed across the bridge, but Voss ignored them. His job wasn't to survive, his job was to make sure the mission succeeded. Leora's ship disappeared into the heart of the Wraithborn mothership. Orla's voice came in, barely above a whisper. "They're inside." Every remaining Wraithborn vessel twisted, their focus snapping toward their capital ship. They knew. They felt the intrusion, and that meant one thing. They were running out of time. Silence filled the bridge of the Dauntless, but the battle outside was deafening. Leora and her team had vanished into the Wraithborn mothership, their fate unknown. The Titan Armada and Kara's forces held the line, hammering the enemy's defenses, but Voss could feel the shift. This wasn't just a fight anymore. This was something else. The Wraithborn weren't just adapting, they were reacting. The alien fleet, once methodical, now moved with a frantic energy. Their ships darted in unpredictable patterns, breaking from their rigid formations. It wasn't a retreat. It was something worse. Orla's hands trembled over her console. "Sir, I think they're preparing for something. I don't know what, but their energy readings are spiking all across the board." Voss turned to Halvorn, whose gaze was locked on the battle screen, his expression grim. "You've seen this before, haven't you?" The Chancellor nodded slowly. "Not personally, but my ancestors wrote about it. There were whispers that long ago the Wraithborn didn't just destroy worlds, they consumed them." Voss stiffened. "What do you mean, consumed?" Before Halvorn could answer, the largest Wraithborn vessel pulsed with a deep, unnatural light. It spread outward in waves, like ripples in a black ocean, the wreckage floating in space, twisted metal, shattered hulls, bodies, began to shift, and then it moved. Orla gasped. "That's impossible!" The debris wasn't debris anymore. It was reforming, pulling itself together, fusing like molten metal. Fragments of destroyed Wraithborn ships crawled toward one another, merging into new forms. Jagged limbs extended from twisted hulls. Entire dead warships knitted themselves into something grotesque, something alive. The Wraithborn weren't just rebuilding, they were evolving. Halvorn's voice was barely audible. This is what they do. They don't just kill, they take. They make themselves stronger. A chill ran down Voss's spine. The Wraithborn weren't losing this battle, they were letting it shape them. Leora's voice crackled through the comms, strained but urgent. "Voss, we found the core, but there's a problem." "Understatement of the century, Captain," Voss muttered. "Talk to me." "It's not just a power source, it's a hive mind. The Wraithborn don't just follow orders, they are the ship. Every vessel, every unit, it's all one thing. That's why they move so perfectly. That's why they're changing." Voss clenched his fists. "Can you still overload it?" There was a pause. "Yes, but it won't just shut them down. It'll trigger a chain reaction across their entire fleet. Every piece of Wraithborn tech connected to this core will react violently. We're talking a full implosion." Voss hesitated. That kind of blast wouldn't just wipe out the Wraithborn, it would rip apart everything nearby. The Titan Armada, Kareth's fleet, the Dauntless, all of it. Orla swallowed hard. "Sir, if they get stronger every time they fight, there won't be another chance. Either we stop them now, or they'll keep coming." On the battle screen, the newly formed Wraithborn abominations began their assault. They tore through Kareth's ships with terrifying speed. Their movements no longer fluid but erratic, like puppets with tangled strings. The Titan Armada was holding, but only barely. The Wraithborn weren't trying to win anymore. They were stalling. Voss exhaled sharply. "Leora, if we do this, how much time do we have before the implosion?" "Minutes," she said. "Maybe less." "Not enough time to escape. Not enough time for anyone." Halvorn met Voss's gaze. There was no hatred between them anymore, no rivalry, just understanding. This wasn't about Earth or Kareth. It never had been. Voss pressed the comms. "Leora, do it." A pause. Then, "Understood." The line went dead. Voss turned back to the battle screen, watching as the Wraithborn twisted and reformed. They thought they were winning. They had no idea what was coming. The comms remained silent. Voss could feel his pulse hammering in his ears as he stared at the battle screen. The Wraithborn fleet was still adapting, growing stronger, but they didn't realize they were seconds away from destruction. Leora and her team were inside the core now, setting off the chain reaction that would tear the enemy apart from within. "All ships prepare for emergency maneuvers," Voss barked. "When that core goes, it'll take everything with it." The fleet scrambled, engines flaring to life as Earth and Kareth's forces tried to break away from the Wraithborn vessels. But the alien ships weren't letting go. They moved erratically, twisting, latching onto whatever they could, as if they sensed something was wrong. Orla's voice was tight with fear. "Sir, they know." Then the comms flared. Lear's voice came through, breathless. "We triggered it. Core destabilizing." A deep rumble sounded in the background, something shifting, something tearing. "But something's wrong. It's not just collapsing, it's reversing." Voss stiffened. "What do you mean, reversing?" Leora coughed, her breath ragged. "The Wraithborn weren't just using the core for power. It's more than that. It's their consciousness. When we overloaded it, it didn't just start a meltdown. It triggered something else. Something older. This isn't just their end, Voss. It's their beginning." A cold wave of dread crashed over him. The screen flickered as the Wraithborn mothership convulsed. Its form rippled, parts of it collapsing inward, but instead of breaking apart, it changed. Its dark metal shifted, unraveling into something organic, something ancient. Then the screaming started. Not from the comms, not from the crew, but from the ship itself. A deep, guttural wail that vibrated through the hull of the Dauntless. Across the battlefield, Wraithborn ships froze mid-maneuver, their lights flickering, their hulls cracking open. Energy pulsed from the mothership's core, and suddenly the battlefield wasn't just a battlefield anymore. It was a graveyard waking up. Dead ships stirred, wreckage coiled together, forming grotesque new shapes. Something was emerging from the dying Wraithborn. A presence, vast and unshackled. The moment Leora had destroyed the core, she hadn't just killed them. She had freed something buried inside it. "Sir," Orla's voice cracked. "We need to go. Now." Voss barely had time to react before the mothership broke apart. It didn't explode, it folded inward, collapsing into itself like a dying star. But instead of vanishing, something else took its place. A shadow, vast and pulsing, like a wound in space. It spread outward, tendrils of darkness stretching, reaching. The Wraithborn ships caught in its wake, vanished, swallowed whole in an instant. Laura's voice returned, barely audible through the static. "It's not a fleet, Voss. It never was." A pause. "It's a doorway." Voss's stomach dropped. The Wraithborn weren't the invaders. They had been holding something back, and now, because of him, because of all of them, that thing was loose. "All ships full retreat," Voss roared. "Get out of here now." Engines ignited, fleets scattering in all directions. The Dauntless veered hard, pushing its thrusters to the limit. Behind them, the shadow pulsed again, expanding. The Wraithborn were gone, erased. But something worse had taken their place, and it was awake. The Dauntless tore through space at maximum speed, the engines straining as Voss gripped the edges of his console. The shadow behind them kept growing, stretching outward like ink spilled across the stars. The Titan Armada and Carrot's forces fled in all directions, but the silence on the comms was suffocating. No one was celebrating. No one was calling it a victory. Orla's voice was quiet. "Did we stop it?" Voss didn't answer. His gaze remained locked on the screen, watching as the battlefield, the place where they had once fought for control, was now nothing more than a gaping wound in space. The Wraithborn... But so was Leora. A sharp beep broke the silence. "Incoming transmission!" Orla shouted. The signal was weak, barely holding together. Then Leora's voice crackled through. "Voss!" He straightened. "You're alive." "For now," she said, her breathing uneven. "We didn't get out in time. When the core collapsed, we were pulled in. But something happened. We're still here. Somewhere." Voss exchanged a look with Orla. "What do you mean, somewhere?" Laura hesitated. "It's hard to explain. The Wraithborn weren't just keeping something locked away, they were feeding it. And now that they're gone, the thing they feared, it's awake. It's watching." A chill ran down Voss's spine. "Can you get back?" Silence. Then, "I don't think so. Not yet." Voss clenched his jaw. He had lost soldiers before. He had lost battles. But this was different. Leora had stopped the Wraithborn. She had saved them all, and now she was trapped in whatever was left behind. "We'll find you," he said firmly. "I don't care what it takes." Leora let out a small, tired laugh. "You always were stubborn, Voss." A pause. "Just be ready." "I don't think this is over." The signal cut out. Voss stared at the empty screen for a long moment. The battlefield was behind them now, but the war wasn't over. Whatever had awakened, whatever had been waiting in the dark, it was still out there. Halforn stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "So, what now, Commander?" Voss exhaled slowly. "We regroup, we prepare, we find out what's coming next." He turned toward the stars, his jaw set. "And when it comes, we'll be ready." The Dauntless disappeared into the void, leaving behind the remnants of a battle that had never truly been theirs. The Wraithborn were gone, but something else had taken their place. and the real war had only just begun.